Thursday, March the 16th, 1978. Late at night in heavy weather, the 230,000-ton Omoko Cadiz runs aground off the French coast. The entire cargo of crude oil spills out from its torn hull. It's the largest loss of cargo in the history of maritime oil transport. Damage to the environment, the ravaged coastline and its wildlife is colossal. The scale of the disaster and the recriminations that follow send shockwaves through world shipping. Public reaction is understandably hostile, and the question that's asked time and time again is, could the grounding of the Omoko Cadiz have been avoided? In particular, could the right actions by one man, the master of that ship, have reduced the risk of this accident or its consequences? These include damage claims of more than $1 billion. March 1977. After 4 days docked in the English port of Hartlepool, the Marion prepares to set sail on the North Sea. Minutes later, disaster strikes. The Marion's anchor fouls the main pipeline connecting the Ekofisk oil field with the British mainland. The pipeline is severely damaged. The Marion's owners are taken to court. Ultimately, they are held responsible and faced with a bill for $25 million. June the 1st, 1974. A time-chartered vessel, the President Kezan, is loaded with a cargo of plywood in Kushiro, Japan. The bales of wood are shored and lashed by a local Japanese firm. A licensed marine surveyor inspects the cargo before departure. June the 13th. The President Kezan is being unloaded in Longview Harbor, Washington, USA. James Turner is a longshoreman working in the hold. A stack of plywood on which he is standing collapses beneath him. Turner is seriously injured and subsequently develops an untreatable form of epilepsy. Turner sues the ship's time charterer, Japan Line Limited. He wins his case and receives damages for personal injury of $900. The master of a ship is a man of many parts. He is a servant in law, the agent for his shipping company and bailee of the goods he carries. He is a commander of men and resources, occupying a position of special trust. He has absolute responsibility for the safety of his ship and his crew. And he has unique powers to make decisions about events and circumstances that may be totally unpredictable. In recent decades, the shipping industry has become increasingly complex. And the law courts has become more frequent. And nowadays, ship owners stand to lose large sums of money. That's why the role of the ship's master is more important than ever. His actions, his decisions, and the understanding of his responsibilities can make all the difference between commercial success and disaster. The events of March the 16th, 1978 may have been exceptional. Masters of most ships may never find themselves in such dramatic situations. But as a powerful illustration of what happens when things do go wrong, the case of the Omoko Cadiz provides useful lessons and general rules for masters of any vessel. The Omoko Cadiz had been built 4 years earlier in Spain. She was equipped with all the most modern aids to navigation and registered under the Liberian flag. On the day of the disaster, she had been on a routine voyage from the Arabian Gulf to Rotterdam with a full cargo of crude oil. At 9:46 that morning, the previously reliable steering gear developed a fault. At the time, the Omoko Cadiz was some 10 miles off the Brittany coast. At first it seemed that the steering fault could be repaired. When this attempt failed, the master tried to secure the rudder using chains and slings. This also failed, and further attempts to find a mechanical solution were thwarted by a blowout in the engine room. When the steering fault was first reported, the master took prompt action to raise a not under command signal. He also broadcast a radio security message warning other traffic to keep clear. But he did not make any request for assistance, even on a standby basis. Nor did he take any steps to have the vessel's anchors readied for use. By 11 o'clock in the morning, the Omoko Cadiz had drifted half a mile towards the coast. At about 11:20, the chief engineer reported that attempts to repair the steering gear had finally been abandoned. From that moment, the master knew for certain that his vessel was at the mercy of the wind and the sea. She could only be prevented from drifting onto the rocky coast with the timely aid of outside assistance. The master summoned help. As it happened, a salvage tug, the Pacific, was about 15 miles away. She immediately turned round to head for the Omoko Cadiz, at the same time offering assistance on the terms of Lloyd's open form. The master called his owners in Chicago, where it was 5:30 a.m. He was advised that if tugs were needed, they should be taken. The salvage tug, the Pacific, arrived on the scene at 12:20 and made immediate preparations for towage. By 1400, the line between the two ships had been made fast. The French coast was only 6 miles away. In the meantime, there had been lengthy discussions between the two masters as to the terms on which the tow should take place. When the towage attempt began, it soon became apparent that the Pacific was not powerful enough to deal with such a large and heavily laden vessel as the Omoko Cadiz. There was further haggling about the terms of the towage. The Pacific's master again invited acceptance of Lloyd's open form. The master of the Omoko Cadiz was unwilling to accept without further reference to his employers in Chicago. Approval for these terms was received at 15:45, although the tow itself had already begun some 2 hours earlier. 20 minutes later, the line between the two vessels snapped. At 1800 hours, the Pacific indicated that she was ready to make a second attempt at towage. At about the same time, word was received that a second, larger tug was on her way. For a brief moment, it seemed all would be well. But the second attempt at towage proved more difficult. The line was not made fast until 20:55. Meanwhile, an attempt to anchor the Omoko Cadiz had proved unsuccessful. Less than 10 minutes after the second attempt at towage had begun, the Omoko Cadiz ran aground. The hull was damaged, and the cargo of crude oil began to run into the sea. Shortly after 2200, the tow line from the Pacific again snapped. Only at 23:26, some 14 hours after the steering gear had failed, did the master of the Omoko Cadiz finally send out an SOS message. The official Liberian inquiry into the Omoko Cadiz disaster was a lengthy and expensive business. But it concluded that there had been a number of mistakes and errors of judgment, any or all of which could have been avoided. In particular, the actions of the ship's master were of crucial importance in shaping the course of events. In the first instance, he appeared to fail to appreciate the grave danger to which his ship had been exposed. Being adrift in rough weather, with no means of steering and so near to the coast, should have been recognized for the perilous circumstances they were. The inquiry also concluded that the master showed a strange and lamentable reluctance to assume responsibility for his vessel in deciding what steps should be taken. The master was also criticized for his inexcusable delay in calling for assistance. An urgent call for a tug should have been made substantially earlier in the proceedings. The final conclusion was that the master had been guilty of gross dereliction, and he was suspended from duty for 3 years. The ship's owners, in a subsequent U.S. court case, were held to be liable for damages in incident. If the judgment stands, damages will certainly be in hundreds of millions of dollars. With the benefit of hindsight, it may seem too easy to realize exactly what the master should have done in these exceptional circumstances, and it's not clear that anything he could have done would have saved the ship. But a central issue was the definition of a master's responsibilities and powers to act. Masters are often reluctant to call for assistance or agree a salvage contract without first consulting their owners. This is understandable, but it should be recognized that the master has the authority and responsibility to take whatever action he thinks is necessary to save his ship, crew, and cargo without reference to anyone else. All responsible shipping companies should back his right to the full to make these decisions in an emergency. The master is the man on the spot. He is the only person normally who can assess the danger he's in. If he does decide he has time to contact his owners, they may be looking out of the window at a sunny, peaceful day on the other side of the world, while around him the storm rages. It's vital, therefore, that he communicates graphically and unambiguously the circumstances and the dangers. The master also should have nothing to fear by putting out a general distress call as early as possible. If a salvage contract is accepted, and it transpires that the ship was in no danger, the size of any salvage award would reflect this. And because the insurers will in any case pay the award, any cost to owners will be mitigated by insurance arrangements. But the overall burden could be substantially increased by inaction. However, it's not only in the teeth of an emergency that the principle of decisive action by the master in accordance with his responsibilities applies.